What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero, back with another retro Yu-Gi-Oh video, and this is a video that I've been looking forward to for quite some time because this is the reason to play Chaser format, the Fusion deck. Now, if you missed my guide on Chaser format that I released the other day, basically Chaser format is the format immediately after Critter with the introduction of the Tournament Pack 1 cards. Now, the main change that these packs made were the introduction of Mechanical Chaser as the new premier beater of choice. But another very interesting development that they introduced were the introduction of fusion substitute monsters like Goddess with the Third Eye that can be used as a substitute in a fusion summon as long as the other fusion material is the correct one. And Metal Raiders does have some interesting fusion monsters that this strategy can facilitate because of this. But before we dive in to the deck breakdown and the games, if you like this sort of content covering these old retro formats, please be sure to subscribe. We are at around 310 subscribers, which is really awesome, as my goal was 300 in December, but it would be great if we could get to 350 soon. My goal for 2023 is to hit 1,000 at some point, and that would be a great way to start off the year as if we hit 350. In addition, if you like this video, please be sure to like the video as always. But with that out of the way, let's talk about this fusion deck. Now, there are many different ways that you could build this deck. I've seen other people's builds of it, and they go in some slightly different directions than mine. But I do like this sort of brew that I've managed to make here. Now, we are maxed out on polymerization, so that way we can pull off the most fusion summons possible if we need to. So we have 3 full polymerizations, and we do have the materials to make 3 whole monsters. We only have 2 Goddess with the Third Eye, because we can make one of our fusion summons with just 2 Thunder Dragons in hand, as Thunder Dragon can search out 2 more, and that's a very easy twin-headed Thunder Dragon, which is honestly the most powerful fusion monster that we're likely to go into. But we do have the potential to go into some others. The main one that we'd want to go into is probably Labyrinth Tank, made up of Cannon Soldier and a Goddess with the Third Eye. 2400 attack is nothing to scoff at. A pretty good attack stat for a monster that you can bring out potentially out of nowhere. We also have the capability, though, to go into a Musician King, which isn't as good in the attack department. 1750 doesn't even beat a Mechanical Chaser. But there are some niche situations where you would want to go into this. And if you like Change of Heart and opponent's Witch of the Black Forest, you could also go into it that way. Same with Change of Hearting and opponent's Cannon Soldier as well to go into Labyrinth Tank. This deck just has so many cool, neat things that it can do. So I'm excited to show off the games and show you where those things happen. Getting ahead of myself a little bit, but I just want to cover the other fusion monsters that we could potentially go into. There's Black Skull Dragon, which can be made off of a Summoned Skull and a Goddess with the Third Eye. We are playing Summoned Skull in the side deck if we want to go into this. We've also got Bakuri Box and Crass Clown in a similar sort of situation. Crass Clown, probably not good enough for the main, but it is in the side if we want to bring it in. And lastly, probably the most fun and most jank fusion monster we have here is Thousand Dragon, and that's because the fusion material that we're playing in the side deck is the most jank in Time Wizard. Very neat card. You know, it's very swingy, right? It depends on a coin toss to actually be able to get off its effect, but if you do ever manage to get off its effect, it is incredibly funny. And also it can go into the Thousand Dragon, which is very nice. But here I am talking about the fusion side deck, and I haven't even finished talking about the main deck. So, of course, we've got the 2 Gods with the Third Eye, the 3 Thunder Dragon to go into our fusion monsters. We also have 2 Sangan and 2 Witch of the Black Forest to search out fusion materials if we need them, but also just to search out the other big monsters in our deck. Things like Mechanical Chaser, which, you know, is the format definer from Tournament Pack 1 that has replaced all traces of Lodgin and 7-colored fish. And also 2K defenders like Giant Soldier of Stone, which can be very useful to wall up when you need to buy time to draw into your fusion materials and polymerizations. And lastly, we are playing 2 Muka Muka, as the deck kind of wants to keep cards in hand, so that way it can save them for later when they pull off a big fusion summon. So we are playing 2 of this card to sort of capitalize on this. We don't really want to play 3, as we will likely be fusion summoning at some point in the early to mid game, so that will deplete our hand size a bit and make any future Muka draws pretty bad. But we are playing the 2 as it is a very good card in this deck. For the spells, we've got the Power 5 limited spells, of course, Change of Heart, Dark Hole, Monster Reborn, Pot of Greed, and Raigeki, all insanely strong. We also have 3 Fissure to deal with our opponent's problematic monsters, 2 Heavy Storm to clear the way for our big fusion summon plays, 2 Last Will to both be able to safeguard against a trap hole. We can bring out like a Muka Muka if our opponent tries to trap hole a Muka or a Mechanical Chaser, and also to potentially get out fusion materials. If we bring out a Cannon Soldier, tribute off another monster, and then activate Last Will to bring out Goddess with the third eye, then that's a Labyrinth tank right there. So Last Will has a lot of different applications in this deck. We have the 3 Polys, as I mentioned before. We want to go all in on Fusion Summon here. If you wanted to make this potentially more competitive, you could maybe cut a Poly. But I actually like the 3 Poly here, as it does mean that you will likely draw into a Fusion Summon at some point, as it does make your Fusion Summons a lot more consistent. Like in Critter format, when I showed off the Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon deck there, oftentimes you would just spend the whole game not drawing Poly when you really wanted to get that Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon out. Here, you draw Poly all the time, and so you will be very likely to be able to bring out the Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon or any other big plays that you want very easily. And lastly, for the spells, we have 2 Swords Revealing Light to stall long enough to hopefully draw into your fusion materials and the like. We are playing a very minimal trap lineup here. We're playing the 1 Mirror Force, of course, as it is crazy in this format, just as it was in Critter. We're also playing 3 Waboku, as it is chainable to Heavy Storm and protects our life points and our monsters. But we're not playing any Trap Holes or Solemn Judgments in the main deck. The reason why we're not playing the Trap Holes is because I find it kind of an underwhelming card. You know, it doesn't really do anything if your opponent already has a threat on board, like Fissure does. And it's just very situational, and your opponent can just heavy it away if they are trying to make a big aggressive push. So I cut that out. We also have the ability to go into some very big monsters here, so I don't really feel like it's as necessary, as if our opponent has a big monster on field, we could just fusion summon out like a 2800 monster to combat it. So I don't really feel like trap holes are that necessary in this deck, and I feel like we don't really care as much about countering our opponent's stuff. We can just use the heavies for that, as we do have a very minimal trap lineup. Maybe in different iterations of this deck that you or any other players put together, you could add in some counter traps or some trap holes if you want. But this is the version that I'm going with, and it served me pretty well so far. The last trap that we have is a Robin Goblin. This is mainly to help against Exodia, but it also does have a good theoretical place in this deck. We're bringing out monsters that can likely beat over any monsters that our opponent has. So if we have that sort of monster backed up by a Robin Goblin, we will potentially be able to get in some damage and be able to discard cards from our opponent's hand, which is very useful, even in games that aren't against Exodia. So I like this in the deck. It also pairs well with the Giant Soldiers of Stone that we're playing in the main as well. For the side deck, we of course have the fusion materials that I mentioned before, but we also have some different side deck strategies. We've got Jirai Gumos if we need to go a bit more aggressive, Man-Eater Bugs if we need more removal, a Giant Soldier of Stone if we want to go even more defensive, and we have 3 Seven Tools of the Bandit. If our opponent's on a bunch of counter traps, then this can be good to bring in. And we also have 3 Trap Holes if our opponent's on a bit more of an aggressive strategy, maybe playing like Jirai Gumos and the like. That's going to do it for the deck breakdown, though. I know that this deck may seem really jank, and to be fair, it is. But hopefully the games that I'm going to show off today will show how strong it can be in the right circumstances. Okay, our first game is up against History of YGO1, who is a regular guest on the channel. Always fun to have them on, and they are actually the one who came up with the idea to name the format Chaser format. So it's appropriate to have them on for the first duel of the format. We, of course, are playing the jank sort of fusion deck. Unclear what they're playing, but let's find out. I believe this is actually the first duel that I ever played in this format as well. So it's very exciting, and I may make some misplays here or there, but you'll have to bear with me. This hand is okay, but I make a fatal misplay right off the bat. I just set the Muka and pass. This is a great move in Critter format, as the max attack on a vanilla beater is 1800, which can't get over a Muka Muka with 5 cards in hand. Unfortunately, in Chaser format, Mechanical Chaser has 1850. So I think I should have just set the Witch of the Black Forest instead and kept the Muka in hand. But I made that play, and it was a fatal error. But you know, they do their thing, so I can't take it back. And, you know, it's fine because they set a monster, so we don't get punished for this. But I really should have just set the Witch here. So if you play this deck in the future, be sure not to make this mistake, as it could be very punished. They're just going to set another back row and pass. We're just going to flip up the Muka Muka, and that will get Trap Hold, unfortunately, which is kind of rough. So we're just going to set this Witch of the Black Forest, pass back to them. We don't really need to commit any back row to board. We could commit a heavy as a bluff, but if we draw a Muka Muka later, it's nice to have more cards in hand. And there's not really too much that they can do here that we're super worried about. They're just going to activate Swords, flip up the Witch, pass back to us, and we draw Swords of our own. Now, we could go aggressive here with the Heavy Storm, but I don't really think it's necessary, as we don't really have too much aggressive pressure here. We could just go for it, though. Looks like we aren't going to. We're just going to set the Heavy Storm and pass back to them. It's unlikely that they're going to heavy or set heavy, as they've got Swords up and they want to get the most value out of that possible. So I feel fine doing this. And we can just pass back to them. We draw Dark Hole, so we could get really aggressive here. Dark Holing away the board, maybe getting a Thunder Dragon to hand, so that way we can fusion summon out a Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon, summoning out Cannon Soldier, attacking in for a ton. We could potentially just get super aggressive anyways. If we Change of Heart their set monsters, summon out Cannon Soldier, tribute off the Witch, get a Thunder Dragon to hand, bring out Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon. That's 2,800 plus 1,400, which is 4,200 already, plus an additional amount from whatever monster they have, and then plus 1,500. Probably not worth it, but I hope that, you know, this math shows that this deck can get super aggressive if it wants to. So we don't want to yet, but we could just make a super huge damage push coming up soon. They're just going to set one. Mechanical Chaser may make it worth it. I don't think it is yet, but we will just go for the super big push here. We're going to heavy away the board. They're going to let it go through, even though they have a Solemn. I think that's smart. And we're just going to bring out the Cannon Soldier. And it looks like we are going to make this play, although we're not going to go for the Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon just yet, as it will not be lethal damage, or anywhere close to lethal damage. So we're just going to go in for some damage here, and get a lot in. And then we can just tribute off some of our monsters. So we're tributing off the Sangan for sure. Yes, they do get a Surge off that, but it gets us the most value on our Change of Heart. And they're going to grab a Giant Soldier. That's perfectly fine. We've got the Swords in hand to combo with a Fissure later. And we can also just do the Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon play that I've been mentioning for multiple turns now. So we're going to think about what exactly we want to do here. We are going to tribute off the Witch and grab the Thunder Dragon. Search 2 more Thunder Dragons. I don't think we're going to bring out the Twin Head this turn, but it's just good to have this in rotation, I think. And if they do Fissure away our monster, then I'm perfectly fine with that. We're going to set these Swords here. I think we could have activated it potentially, but I think that maybe plays a bit too much into heavy. We're just going to set this as a bluff so they don't really get any funny ideas here. And they're just going to Fissure away our Cannon Soldier, summon out a Masked Sorcerer, and try and attack in. They do get a draw here, which is kind of unfortunate, but honestly, that's not too bad. They're just going to set one, pass back to us. We draw a Giant Soldier, which could be good for a defensive front here. We're going to bring out the Mechanical Chaser, see if that baits out a Trap Hole. It doesn't, so we'll just attack into the Masked Sorcerer, see what they do. They're just going to take the 950, and this makes me feel very good, as we've got Dark Hole, we've got Poly plus Thunder Dragons. We could potentially just win out of nowhere here, as they are below 2,800 life points. We're going to pass back to them, though, playing it safe. They're going to Fissure away our Mechanical Chaser and summon out a Jiraigumo, which is very interesting. They're going to attack in for 22, and we will take it as we don't have Waboku. But let's see what they get off the coin toss. They call heads, and they will lose that coin toss, so they'll drop down to 1275, which is very nice to see. And we actually draw a Goddess with the third eye, so we could poly using Goddess instead of a Thunder Dragon. I don't really think there's a real need to, but we're just going to bring out the Giant Soldier of Stone and Fissure away their monster. As this is a bit safer, if they've got Waboku, then we just commit one monster to board as opposed to going all in here. And I feel fine doing this. And they're going to activate Ultimate Offering, so maybe we do get a little bit punished here by this play. If we had brought out the Twin Head, maybe we could have gone a bit more all in. And they will have to pay 5 here, but unfortunately we won't be able to get over that Giant Soldier. So we're just going to activate Swords to prevent them from crashing or anything. and pass back to them. They're just going to pass back to us. We draw Fissure, so we can just get in here. We'll activate Fissure. They activate Solemn, which is very nice because now they drop below 500. So we will just be able to win the game here with a Dark Hole. Unfortunately, we didn't get to show off our cool polymerization play, but you know, that did show how the deck can win very handily without even having to go into its fusion summons. The way that I view fusion summoning in a format like this as sort of as a big push after you've exhausted a lot of your smaller threats. So that way you hopefully get your opponent to use up removal on the smaller threats before committing your big boys to board. And, you know, that can make for games where, like, you have the combo in hand for a while, but you just don't go into it, which can be kind of anticlimactic. But I think it's very fun and really shows off how good this deck can be, because even if they had more stuff to stop us there, we still had plays later on, and we had explosive plays later on. So I think that was a really good showing for the deck in Game 1. I'm pretty sure we don't side into anything here. Maybe we side into some 7 tools, seeing that they're on Solemn, or some Trap Holes, seeing that they're on Jurai. But I might just be trying out the main deck as is. So I think I'm just going to keep it as is and see what happens there. If we lose Game 2, we lose Game 2. That's perfectly fine. But hopefully we will do a bit better than that. They're just going to set 2, pass back to us, and this is a great hand. We can just Pot of Greed right away, draw 2 here, and we draw Poly, so we could just go into Musician King now. There's no good reason why we would, but we could. We're just going to bring out the Witch and probably Change of Heart that set, as we can afford to go a bit aggressive here with the Poly in hand. We can bring out the Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon very soon, most likely, or just, you know, a Labyrinth Tank or a Musician King if we want it. We're just going to Change of Heart here and get aggressive, and we get very rewarded for that, as that is a Masked Sorcerer. And they will Mirror Force here, kind of unfortunate, but this does let us get the Thunder Dragon to hand. We'll discard the Thunder Dragon, add 2 more Thunder Dragons to hand. Now we have a very explosive play for next turn, and we know that their Mirror Forces are gone, so they don't really have any traps that can stop Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon, as Fusion Summoning does dodge around Trap Hole. Main 2, we're just going to set the Mirror Force, pass back to them. You could have argued that maybe we should have set the Heavy, you know, just to bait them into setting more back row, and saving the Mirror Force for later when it could get more value. But I'm perfectly fine with this. They're going to bring out a Mechanical Chaser and try attacking in here. I think we should take this, as we do have the Fissure in hand, and it looks like we will. They're going to activate Swords, and we get pretty punished for setting the Mirror Force instead of the Heavy. But the Giant Soldier is pretty nice. It can block their Mechanical Chaser, so we don't have to deal with it for a couple turns. And we were perfectly timed biding our time for a little bit here. They're going to take 150, Fissure away our Giant Soldier in main 2, and pass back to us. Waboku is a pretty good draw. We're just going to set the Gods with the third eye here, so that way we don't have to discard a card at the end of the turn. I think we are probably just going to use up the Mirror Force next turn, clear the way for the Heavy, and make a super big push. Maybe not the best choice, but I think that is what we have to do now, given our current hand. And they are just going to go for the Mechanical Chaser play here. We are going to Mirror Force. They're going to set 1, set 2, pass back to us. We drop Mechanical Chaser, which is nice. We are going to Heavy Storm the board away, and they do have Waboku, so unfortunately we can't really get in here for too much, so we'll just set a Waboku of our own, pass back to them. Let's see what they do. They're going to Pot of Greed here, so they'll be able to draw 2, summon out Jurai Gumo, and try and attack in here. I think that we should probably Waboku this, so that way we have the Gods for the third eye if we want to make some fusion plays later. But honestly, we don't have another fusion material in hand, and we've only got 1 Poly, which is going towards the Twin-Headed. So I don't think we need to keep this around, so we might just let it die here. It looks like we will just let it die here. So I think that's fine. It's kind of unfortunate as it decreases our ceiling later on in the game, potentially. But it's not the most likely to come up, so I think this is perfectly fine. We're just going to bring out Mechanical Chaser. They do have Trap Hole for that. We could go for the Poly play here to get over their Jurai Gumo, which might be the choice. But it looks like we're just going to Fissure away their Jurai, pass back to them. And they're going to bring out a Masked Sorcerer, try and attack in here. There's a good debate as to whether we let this go through or not. It seems like they don't really have much back row right now. So we could just Waboku. We do have another Waboku in hand. And it looks like we will do that. And they're going to activate swords. That's kind of rough. But Dark Hole is a pretty great draw. We can clear their board away, set the Waboku, pass back to them. And we've got a great hand for an aggressive push later on. We've got the Poly plus Thunder Dragons. So that is very nice for later. And it looks like they've used up a fair amount of resources up to this point in the game. That sword will last them for a bit longer, but we can bide our time. We draw Muka, which isn't the best right now. We don't have too many cards in hand. So I think we're just going to keep it in hand. They've used up 2 Masked Sorcerers already, so it's unlikely that they have a third on hand. And we draw Lastral, which is a very good draw as well. We're just going to pass back to them. I think maybe we could have set the Muka, setting up for a cool Lastral play here, where we tribute out a Thunder Dragon, Fusion Summon away the Thunder Dragons, and Lastral out an additional monster. But they're at high enough life points that that won't likely kill them, so I think we can wait for a little bit longer. They're just going to set one pass back to us. Reborn is really good. If that isn't Waboku, I think we could just potentially win here. It would be very greedy to go for a game here, but we could do it. I don't think we will, though. We're just going to bring out a Muka and try getting in. This Muka is at 2100, which is very respectable. So we're going to try whittling down their life points a little bit before we go for a big damage push. Main phase 2, I think we're fine with how everything looks, so we're just going to pass back to them. If they use up a removal on the Muka, then that's fine, because that's one less removal that they'll have for the Twin-Head Thunder Dragon later. So honestly, we're okay with that. They do have the Fissure to get rid of the Muka, so kind of rough, but again, you know, one less for the Twin-Head Thunder Dragon. And they'll just pass back to us. So we could potentially go for a big damage push. Maybe Reborn back a Masked Sorcerer, Fusion Summon out a Thunder Dragon. Or Reborn out a Jiraigumo and bring out the Thunder Dragon. A couple different options here. Let's see what we actually end up doing. We could also make the play, you know, Reborn out a monster from our graveyard, tribute over it with Thunder Dragon, Last Will, Fusion Summon, you know, do a ton of stuff that way. But I don't think it's necessary. We're going to think about it for a bit. Doing that play with the Last Will also plays into Trap Hole a little bit, which we don't really want to do. We're just going to Reborn out a Muka here. It looks like we're just going to try and get in a little bit more damage here. Play around Waboku into a board clear a little bit. And they do have Waboku, so I am very glad that we did that. And we're just going to pass back to them. They do have Raigeki, so I'm very, very glad we didn't go for a huge damage push there. And they're just going to set one pass back to us. Goddess with the Third Eye is pretty nice, especially with that Last Will. But we're probably going to use the Polymerization on the Thunder Dragon here. And it looks like we are going to do that. We're just going to go for the Twin Head now. They've used up 2 Fissures and a Raigeki. They don't really have too many more removal options left. And we're going to bring out the Goddess with Third Eye to get even more aggressive here. If we draw another Polymerization, we do have Waboku to protect the Goddess with the Third Eye. So we should be fine in that case. And this will just enable us to get in for more damage and also dodge around Fissure. If they've got Dark Hole, that's unfortunate. But, you know, if they've got Dark Hole, they've got Dark Hole. They're just going to set another pass back to us. And we feel very good about this. We're going to attack him with Twin Head again. And just chip in for a little bit more damage. It looks like they don't really have a good way to clear the Twin Head, so we're feeling very happy about that. They are going to bring out a Cannon Soldier, and they're going to try attacking into Goddess with the Third Eye. And to me, this means that they've got a Fissure that they can't use because we'll just hit Goddess with the Third Eye here. So we are just going to fire the Waboku now. And it looks like they're not going to activate anything, so maybe I was wrong. But at least this way we still get damage on board. We could actually go for game here, I think, if we Last Will, attack Goddess with the Third Eye into Cannon Soldier, bring out a Cannon Soldier, and attack over it with Twin Head, and then attack in for the 14, tribute off our board afterwards. That could just be game, but Fissure is just game in a much easier way. They're going to Solemn that, and that just is the end of the game, as now they're at a low enough threshold where it won't matter, we can just kill them. Looks like they had a Reborn in hand. That's interesting. So, yeah, nothing they could really do here. And this is why I like saving the big fusion plays for later in the game, because we managed to get them to use up a lot of their removal here. And that just made it so that they could not clear the 2800 beater that we had later on in the game. And that was super, super powerful. And I think that's where this deck really shines. But of course, this deck was so fun, I don't just have one duel to show off with it. So let's dive into the other duel I've got prepared with this. Okay, we've got a game against KOF1996, another frequent guest on the channel. Always great to have them on. We're playing the Jank Fusion Substitute deck again. Unclear what they're playing, but hopefully we'll find out. We are going to go for rock here for the rock, paper, scissors, and we will win. So that means that we do get to go first. So let's see how our hand is starting out. This is a pretty decent hand. We've got a lot of aggressive pressure in the Mechanical Chasers early on, and we do also have Giant Soldier of Stone to act as a defender. We also have the Change of Heart Cannon Soldier combo, which is very nice as well. So this is honestly a really good hand. We're just going to set the Giant Soldier, pass back to them, see what they do. They're going to flip it up with a Swords, set one, pass back to us. Swords is kind of unfortunate, but nothing we can really do here. We're going to Thunder Dragon, get 2 more Thunder Dragons to hand. And then I think, well, we're at 7 cards, so we have to commit something to field. So, oh, I guess we don't notice that. Oh, I guess we discard. Oh, that's kind of awkward in this deck, as now we don't have a Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon fodder. That's very unfortunate. I think we should have set the Fissure instead, but oh, that's really rough here, actually. Yeah, that's I'm not sure I would have done that going back to do it again, and this is why, you know, we draw Polymerization, which we can't use now. We could have used it before with the 2 Thunder Dragons, but now we can't. So I think we really should have just set the Fissure. They were unlikely to heavy it, and we're probably going to use it here anyways, so there's no real point to having saved it. We are just going to Fissure away that Cannon Soldier, pass back to them. And this is really rough. They're going to Change of Heart here. Tribute out a Summoned Skull. Get in for 2,500. It's a bit worrying. We're already at a very low life point deficit, and we've lost our big fusion play. We do have the option to, like, bring out a Goddess with the third eye and still go into it. But, you know, that's not the best play in the world. Last spell's an interesting draw here. We could just go for the Change of Heart Cannon Soldier play now. And it looks like we are going to do that. We are going to Cannon Soldier away that Summoned Skull, and then just pass back to them. We could have also Cannon Soldiered away the Cannon Soldier, last without out a Giant Soldier, but I think that was a bit overkill, and it looks like they're just going to walk out a Mechanical Chaser here anyways. They're just going to set one, pass back to us. Pot of Greed's very nice. We'll Pot of Greed here, see what we get. Fissure's a pretty good draw, so we can bring out the Mechanical Chaser. That's fine by them. We'll just Fissure it away and get in for 1850. Let's see if they've got anything. Looks like they don't. Main 2, we're just going to set the Heavy Storm. Honestly, we could have maybe saved this in case we want to bring out a Muka later, but, I mean, this baits them into setting more back row potentially, so I don't think it's a bad play here. And they're going to activate Thunder Dragon of their own, grabbing 2 to hand. Now, it seems very likely, given that they are playing Summoned Skull and the Thunder Dragons, that they may also be on a Fusion Substitute deck, but one that plays the Summoned Skull in the main. And this is what I was saying earlier, where there are so many different ways that you can build this deck, which is part of what makes it so cool. So I'm glad to see another build of it on the channel here. And they're going to activate Card Destruction, which is actually incredibly brutal for us here, as we had a very good hand. And they do get rid of their Thunder Dragons, though, so maybe not the best thing in the world. I guess they've got other fusion monsters to go into, but I don't know, kind of iffy. Yeah, we lost a very good hand here, unfortunately. Luckily, we do get some other good ones, and we can just heavy away their back row here. So we'll heavy. They do have Woboku, but they've also got a heavy of their own that we get rid of, which is very nice to see. We're just going to set a Woboku of our own, pass back to them. They are going to set one, set another, pass back to us. And we could potentially go for the heavy here, try and make a big push. We do have Reborn as well. This is a bit iffy. I think we might just want to attack into their set, and it looks like we are going to do that. So they're going to get back a Swords. That's perfectly fine, as we do have the heavy. And they are going to just activate that Swords. And looks like they're passing back to us. This is honestly not that bad. We've got Cannon Soldier to combo with Last Will. We might just want a heavy here in case they don't have Woboku. I think we could potentially win. It looks like we are going to do that. They've got Solemn, though, for the heavy, which is quite unfortunate. And I don't really think there's a way that we can do Cannon Soldier shenanigans to kill them this turn. So we're just going to set a Giant Soldier pass back to them. If they've got a board clear, that's kind of unfortunate. But this plays around Fisher a little bit, and we do have the Waboku in a worst case scenario. Gods with the Third Eye is very nice. We now have the material to go into a Labyrinth tank here, which is pretty good. We're going to set the Gods with the Third Eye, and I don't really like this play. I think I should have done something else, because it does play into Dark Hole. I mean, I get that, you know, if it did manage to stick the landing and we could Cannon Soldier away our board, we would win next turn, as we just Cannon Soldier away everything, Last Will, Monster Reborn out another material. But I think this was a bit greedy, and we are getting punished for our greed right here. So we will lose everything. They're going to bring out a Sangan and try and get in here for 1,000. We will take that. And they're just going to set one pass back to us. They know that we've used up 2 heavies, so they can feel fine doing this. Muka's a very good draw here, though, actually. We're just going to set the Muka, pass back to them. Now, Mechanical Chaser will be able to get over this, but honestly, that's not the worst thing in the world. We've got Reborn to deal with Mechanical Chaser next turn, potentially. And they're just going to bring out a Masked Sorcerer. So they're going to attack into our set. It is luckily the Muka Muka, which will have 1,500 defense here. So they will take 5, and they'll pass back to us. We're feeling very good about this, actually. We're just going to bring out the Sangan and attack into Masked Sorcerer. I guess we're playing around Mirror Force a little bit here. And they will just take it. Masked Sorcerer will die. They'll pass back to us. They're going to crash the Sangans. So we'll be able to search out a Witch, which is pretty good for us. And they'll be able to search out a Magician of Faith. That's very unfortunate. They will be able to get back something here, potentially. And they do have Last Will to bring out another monster from deck. So it's looking kind of rough for us here. They will get out a Witch, which is kind of unfortunate, and pass back to us. Fisher is a pretty good draw here. We could just get in for damage here and potentially win the game. It's a bit iffy. We're going to think about it, whether we actually want to go for that, as Fishing a Witch is pretty bad. But we might want to do it anyways. We're going to Fisher the Witch, switch Muka to attack. Oh, and they're going to Magic Jam into that. Very interesting. And they do have Polymerization in hand, which does mean that they are on the Fusion strategy. That's a bit interesting. Now we've got to decide whether we want to go for the big play here. And it looks like we will. We're going to bring out the Witch, activate Last Will preemptively. Muka Muka will still have over 1,200 attack, so we will be able to clear the Witch no matter what here. And if they do have a Mirror Force, this does play around it a little bit. So we're going to attack in. The Witch will die. They'll grab a Mechanical Chaser to hand. Quite unfortunate for us, but this could just be the end of the game here, as they'll take 11. We are going to Reborn out a Cannon Soldier here. And this will enable us to trigger the Last Will and also just deal a ton of damage to them. So that will be the end of the game. I think we made some very questionable plays there. Like, if we hadn't discarded the Thunder Dragon early on, we could have made a big fusion play. But the card destruction would have kind of wrecked us anyways. So I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. It's just nice to see another build of this deck. And that's part of why I've really enjoyed exploring the format a bit so far, as everyone wants to dive in to the Fusion deck and figure out how they want to build it. And it's such a cool deck, so it's always cool to see different takes on it. For game 2, I think we keep the deck largely the same. I don't think we'd make any major side deck changes, as I feel like we're already pretty good in the mirror match here. The card destructions are annoying, but we don't have Solemns on the side. Maybe that's a potential side deck option for another time. But they're just going to bring out Mechanical Chaser, set one pass. This is a very good hand, even though it may not look it. Robin Goblin's a great card. We do have the Fisher to deal with the Mechanical Chaser. All we need is a monster. Unfortunately, we don't draw one. We're going to Fisher away their Mechanical Chaser and set the Robin in pass. You might wonder why this is, as, you know, we do have a Waboku, which can actually do something on their turn. The reason for this is, with the Fisher in hand, we can likely clear away their monster next turn and get in for a discard, which is very strong against a Fusion deck. If we discard a Polymerization or a material that they wanted for later, that can be very, very good. They're going to bring out a Cannon Soldier and try and get in here for 14. We will unfortunately take that, pass back to us. We draw Giant Soldier, so that is very nice. We're going to actually set it instead of going on the aggressive here, and the reason is if they attack into it with the Cannon Soldier, we will still be able to Robin Goblin them. So I still think that this is a pretty good play, and there's no real need to get super aggressive just yet. We do have the 2 Fishers in hand. They're going to swords flip up the giant soldier and set one pass back. Kind of unfortunate, as now we can't get aggressive even if we wanted to. We draw Thunder Dragon though, which is very nice. So now we have a fusion monster online. And I think maybe we could set the Waboku here, and it looks like we do just in case. And they're just going to set another pass back to us. This makes us feel very good, as they're unlikely to heavy storm us anytime soon, so that Robin Goblin likely will survive for quite a bit longer. We're going to activate this Fisher, as we are at 7 cards in hand, and we might as well. They're going to tribute out a Summoned Skull, which is quite unfortunate for us, as they will get a search off the Sangan here, and they can actually get over our giant soldier. They're going to attack in. We could Waboku this, but I think we're just going to let it go, save the Waboku for a better time. And they'll just pass back to us. We can Fisher away the Summoned Skull, which is quite nice. Bring out Mechanical Chaser. Unfortunately, that will get Trap Hold, but that's not the worst thing in the world. We're still set up for a very good turn next turn. They're going to bring out the Witch and try and attack in for 11. We'll just let that go through. We can take it. And they'll pass back to us. We draw a Heavy, which we don't want to use anytime soon, as we do have Robin up. So we'll just bring out a Mechanical Chaser and try getting in here. We'll flip up the Robin Goblin on attack deck, and they do have a Solemn for that, so that is quite unfortunate. We won't be able to get in some discards here, but it does make our Heavy later very much more live. And they will drop down to a very, very low amount of life points, 3250, which feels very good, especially as we do have the Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon play in the pipeline. We're just going to pass back to them. They bring out Jiraiya. That's perfectly fine by us. They're going to attack in, and we could actually Waboku this. It's kind of debatable, because we might want a Heavy next turn for our Thunder Dragon play, but they haven't used up any Waboku. We have the read that they don't have Waboku in the back row, or else they would have activated that instead of the Solemn on the Robin Goblin. But it might just be a bit too risky. It looks like we are going to go for it anyways, though. They will take half their life points here. Oh, and they've got 7 tools, so they're going to take even more. That's very interesting. I think that we might have done the ordering here wrong, as I would have had to activate Waboku chaining to the Jiraiya effect. So they would have taken 1,000 before having their life points. I don't really think it would have mattered, though, as they'd just be at 11. Maybe it would have mattered. I don't know. It's tough to say. And they're just going to set one pass back to us. We draw a 3rd Polymerization, which this is showing kind of the flaws of playing 3 Polymerizations, as it can brick pretty badly. But I think we do have to go for it, as it's our only play right now. We're going to Heavy away the back row. It's just a Solemn, which is very nice to see. So we're going to Fusion Summon out a Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon. And it looks like they're going to admit defeat here. They had Raigeki and Fisher, so I think that this was still very much a game. And we just reveal that we have the 2 polys. But I think that they might have actually won, as we didn't actually have a monster for a while. We would have dropped them down to 25 life points, though, so that was very risky. They probably wouldn't have won, as we do have Cannon Soldiers in deck, and that Witch would have enabled us to get one. But it was still worth playing this game out, I think. But those are the games that I wanted to show you today, and I think they are a very good showing for the Fusion deck. We managed to win both the mirror match against a Fusion deck of their own, and against a more standard deck that History of YGO was playing. So I think that this deck is definitely able to win games, and it's at least a rogue deck in this format. And it's super fun to play. You just feel so in control if you actually have a choice of what fusion monsters to go into, and you can make some super, super explosive plays. Yes, the deck can brick at times, as you saw in this last game here. Drawing 3 polymerizations was very unfortunate. But sometimes going into a Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon is just enough on its own, and can just enable you to get them down to a low enough life point threshold that you can kill them out of nowhere through something like Cannon Soldier. So I think the deck is really, really cool. I highly encourage people to check it out if you're planning on playing this format, as I do think it is the main reason to play this format. It's just super fun. But what do you think? Do you think that I'm overselling this deck? Do you think that it's a lot worse than these duels made it seem? Or do you think that it's just not very fun? Would you prefer like Mass Control or Beatdown or other sorts of decks like that in this format? Please let me know down in the comments below. And until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.